weekday right here on KCAA. My show is sponsored locally by Teamsters 1932, a strong union with 14,000 members in the IE. Our message is clear. Unions improve the lives of working people. You have a right to form and join a union, so go to Teamsters1932.org and get started now.
Located in the heart of San Bernardino, California, the Teamsters Local 1932 Training Center is designed to train workers for high-demand, good-paying jobs in various industries throughout the Inland Empire. If you want a pathway to a high-paying job and the respect that comes with a union contract, visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org. Are you graduating high school soon and wondering what to do next? College is one option, but why not consider the high-paying jobs made possible by union power? Labor Union Teamsters Local 1932 has opened a training center to get you into the high school to high-paying job pipeline. You'll learn all the skills needed to excel in opportunities across industries. Visit 1932trainingcenter.org to enroll today. That's 1932trainingcenter.org.
Labor unions built the middle class, and the middle class built America. That's the message from Teamsters Local 1932, a strong and successful labor union based in San Bernardino that represents over 14,000 hardworking people across the Inland Empire. The Teamsters are ready to help you organize for better pay, increased benefits, and improved working conditions. Reach out to Teamsters 1932 at teamsters1932.org/organize to speak with an organizer.
Continues with your host, Daud Andre, every Saturday afternoon from 4 to 5 p.m. Coming up next at 5 o'clock, we have The Rick Smith Show with your host, Rick Smith. Keep it locked. You're tuned into listener-sponsored, locally controlled 99.5 FM, WBAI, New York.
It's time for The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, lots to get to, lots to talk about as we speak. People in the streets, the march for our lives, talking about how are we going to keep our kids safe, how are we going to keep our community safe, how are we going to keep people safe. Gun sanity, something we should be talking about. I'm going to get that in the second half of the hour. The big rally today in Washington, D.C., and really all across the country, as there were, as I understand, something like 450 planned rallies. I'm sure there were much more of those, more activity across the country. We're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, this week, the big January 6th committee hearing, the opening salvo, the beginning of what is going to be a couple weeks of laying out and presenting the case to the American people, what has been 17 months in the making, 1,000+ interviews, 150,000 pages of documents, hours of testimony, hours of video footage. And as I said on the night of January 6th, this will be the first coup attempt in history where the seditionists, where the traitors, where the criminals were proud, gleeful of their activities and videotaped it for us. So there is video proof. And in fact, on Thursday, when the big hearing began, it's one of the things they brought up. That the hate groups had their own videographer come in and videotape the meeting of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers. The big secret meeting, and that they videotaped. And maybe it's just me. And I guess, it's something that my grandfather always said, if you're messing up, make sure you're the only one who knows it, because then you've only got about a 50% chance of getting ratted out. Over the next several weeks, I think we're going to see a lot of the Oath Keeper, Proud Boy, 3% crowd, whatever the ones who on the day of January 6th pledged their lives, their blood, their treasure, that they were going to keep Donald Trump in the Oval Office because he, and this came out on Thursday, he knew he lost. He wound them up. He everything that happened was by design, and we knew that. We absolutely knew that. But in the months after that pledge to life, watering the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and patriots, that has softened. And I think we're going to see a lot of those people who were all whipped into a frenzy, all lathered up, all bunched up in the panties, attacking our Capitol. Going to see a lot of them coming to the realization that it was for naught, and that all of the things that they believed, all of the stuff that they were spoon-fed, all of the lies and disinformation, and the F channel, that interestingly enough, the F channel that did not broadcast the 2 hours of hearings, yet instead regular scheduled programming without commercials. I mean, to me, that's like, hold on a second, no commercials? Why no commercials? Well, obviously, they don't want people going off, looking for something else on another channel where, since everyone else was carrying the hearing, some of the minions may actually see what really happened. And I said from the beginning, I don't so much care about the idiots and the dupes, the ignoramuses, the people who urinated on desks and defecated on the floors and broke the windows. Not so much concerned about that. They will be held accountable. They're going to get something out of it. Slaps on the wrist is what we've been seeing. I want the people who plotted. I want the people who schemed. I want the people who planned all this. And what came out of Thursday's hearing, what came out is that everyone around him, everyone around Donald Trump knew. Trump knew. Trump's own daughter knew. Only he said, she checked out, whatever the hell checked out means. But everybody knew. And the vast majority of them were cowards. Some of them resigned, and you go, okay, they resigned. That's an act of something, right? Nobody spoke up. Everybody just left. Resigned, okay, I'm not going to put myself in the middle of this. I'm going to resign so I have plausible deniability so that I don't get sued or crimes or whatever down the road. But didn't really come out forcefully and defend democracy. That was left to Mike Pence, and even he did that in a halfway kind of way. Had to seek out Dan freaking Quayle. And you go, but at least he did the right thing. Yeah, at least he did the right thing. And the right thing was not getting into the car where he was trapped, where they had him trapped. He didn't get into the car because I argue, had he gotten into the car where the Secret Service wanted to push him and take him off into who knows where, he probably would have ended up in Fairbanks, Alaska, under the mountains somewhere, for his own safety, of course. Because you had Chuck Grassley, who at the time even said he was surprised to see Mike Pence there. And this, I think, is something we're going to see coming out in the weeks ahead. What the Secret Service was doing. This conspiracy, this plot, this scheme, whatever you want to call it, this plan, this was far-reaching and all-encompassing. And I'm hoping that they bring that and those people out to light. We found out that my congressman, Scott Perry, was begging for a preemptive pardon, as other members of Congress were. Other Republican members of Congress were seeking their cover, while at the time doing everything they could possibly do to go, no, it's all a lie. It's all the election was stolen. They all bought hook, line, and sinker. They were bathing in the outrage candy and spewing it to the minions. They were all on the same page. And now, looking back on that day, as horrified as we all were, and look, they put out the video of the day from, compiled a whole bunch of video evidence that, I got to tell you, made me angry, heartbroken for our country to see the Confederate flag marched through our Capitol, to see the kind of vile displays. And now with more information and a clearer picture of what the back scenes were, looking at that day a little bit differently. Now, up until that January 6th insurrection, up until that day, I had been saying all of the right-wing attacks on capitals across the country, all of the pandemic, all of the Proud Boy, 3%er, all of those fringe groups, all of their attacks on capitals across the country, especially the one in Richmond, Virginia, where they had our big Second Amendment lobbying day. I said at the time when that stuff was going on, these are exercises. They're doing this to gauge response, not just political response, not just response from you and me, the public, but the response of police response, of how governors will respond, how the military will respond. They were gauging how this was going to happen. So they had a pretty good idea of how things were going to go on January 6th, which is why it looked like a military operation, where on all sides they had entrance at pretty close. It was got to give them credit. Some of them had been in the military. It was well run. And when you look back at it and you go, what was the purpose of the rally? Rallies have purposes, don't they? Today, for instance, it's to encourage Congress and the American people to support moving the line of gun control somewhere a little bit closer to sanity. That's the purpose, to organize people to say, you know what, maybe we don't need to have weapons of war in people's hands without completely doing away with the Second Amendment. Maybe there are some common sense reforms that we can be moving towards, like background checks and red flag laws and things that we can do without infringing on people's rights to own and bear arms. That's what this rally was about. It's about pushing legislators in a positive direction. January 6th was about what? It was in the name. Stop the steal. Everybody I talked to who went for the same reason. To stop the certification of the presidential election. To stop Mike Pence, one guy, from certifying Joe Biden as president of the United States. That's all it was about. That was the point. So anyone who says, no, it was just a family day in the park, and it was just, an American day to show our pride. Nonsense. The stated goal of everyone who went there was to stop the certification of the election. That's what it was. The criminal intent was there from the beginning. I want to know who funded the bus trips. I want to know who put people on planes. I want to know who funded the organizations who did all of the organizing. I want to know who those people are. Said that on January 6th, the night it happened. And I've been saying it ever since for the last 17 months. I want to know the people who plotted, who planned, who schemed. I want those folks. I don't care about the dupes and the ignoramuses. They were wound up, and I think Liz Cheney did a very good job of pointing that out. And I also think she did a very good job of pointing out the fact that, when Donald Trump is gone, the Republicans who have supported him, who have covered for him, and have done his dirty work, they are going to be the ones who will be dishonored by history. They will be remembered. People like my Congressman, Scott Perry, who she named by names. And I said, look, I want to know who those names are. All of them. All the ones who gave tours, all of the ones who gave aid and comfort, all of the ones who spoke at white supremacist rallies, all of the ones who put their name on documents to help organize them. And the other thing we found out, interestingly enough, from the extremist groups themselves is Trump himself was one of their greatest recruiters. I find that interesting. And it really does show, why he is popular with a segment of the population. Now, the hope is what comes out of these hearings. I personally don't think it's going to move the needle any. I don't think this is going to help Democrats in November, as some have told me, no, this is a game changer. It's going to change hearts and minds, and everyone's going to turn. No, I'm not thinking that way. I'm thinking this was an audience of one, Merrick Garland, to say, look, these are the crimes. Here it is in public. Build groundswell of angry people re-examining January 6th, getting people to remember how they felt that day, remembering how angry they were that day, and then putting it in the context that they knew. They knew everything they were talking about was a lie. They knew there was no election fraud. They knew that what they were saying was total BS. They knew, and they were all cowards. They knew, and they did worse than nothing. They went along with the scheme, and what we know now is there were memos. They put out memos for their treason, and history will have that as well. So I'm looking forward to Monday's hearing. There's going to be a lot more of these, and we're going to take a quick break right here. When we come back, we're going to talk with Maya May, who is the co-host of We're Speaking over on the Lincoln Project TV, and get some of her thoughts on the day of hearings and maybe where this is going to go forward, and get some of her thoughts as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, if you miss any portion of our program or any of our programs. We do a show Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. nationwide. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts, from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, and everywhere in between. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here on WBAI 99.5 New York. Go to WBAI.org and become a WBAI buddy today. Help keep radio programs like ours on the air by becoming a WBAI buddy. Do that by going to WBAI.org and become one of our buddies. Do that today. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day striking steelworkers battled back-to-work forces at Newton Steel in Monroe, Michigan. Steelworkers were on strike against 3 steel companies across 5 states in the push to organize Little Steel. Of the 3, Republic Steel sites had experienced brutal picket line violence, especially in South Chicago. Republic had recently purchased Newton Rolling Mill. Management there was bent on forcing the reopening of the plant. John L. Lewis promised 8,000 to 10,000 workers from Detroit to bolster picket lines. The mayor of Monroe, Daniel Naggs, called upon all able-bodied men with military experience to enlist in a citizens' army to escort scabs back to work. Police and hundreds of deputies set up checkpoints on the outskirts of the city to stop suspected CIO supporters from entering Monroe. Black SWAC organizer Leonidas McDonald from Chicago had already been dragged from his car, beaten, and driven from town on foot by scabs earlier in the day. At the same time, Mayor Naggs, company officials, as well as SWAC and company union organizers met in the state's capital with Governor Murphy to negotiate a settlement. As they met, 200 more special police were sworn in and instructed in the use of sidearms and tear gas. Police deputies and scabs armed with guns, clubs, and tear gas shattered the picket line that evening. Then deputies seized strikers' cars and drove them into the river. 18 strikers were hospitalized. Outraged UAW supporters from Pontiac declared a labor holiday in protest and headed to Monroe. But UAW officials ordered them to turn back in an effort to stem the anti-union violence. The organizing drive had been dealt another serious setback.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, I've been watching and reading a lot of people's social media posts on the hearings, and one of them just made me laugh. My next guest wrote, "I'm rewatching last night's hearings like how I rewatch The Usual Suspects. Trump really thought he was some Kaiser Soze level stuff," and I'm going, yeah, kind of. I mean, he put himself in this position where nothing's going to touch him. He's above any, and I still think he is. Honestly, I still think he's not going to be held accountable. But I'm going, yeah, this actually, yeah, I kind of think so. And that's why I've asked Maya May to come talk with us. Maya is the co-host of We're Speaking over on Lincoln Project TV. You can check that out over at lincolnproject.us. Also follow them on Twitter at Project Lincoln. Maya, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I'm glad to be here.
So, I'm looking at this, and I would love if Trump were held accountable. And there are some people who still give me some hope that it might happen. I don't think it will, but I'm curious your thoughts.
So I have to say, I thought I was prepared for these hearings. I was prepared. I was hydrated. I was like, I know what we're going to see is probably going to blow our minds. I'm sure there's going to be some, never before seen footage that we're just going to go, oh. But I have to tell you, as they laid out that case, as they presented the facts, and this is why I think it's so important for people to actually watch the hearings and not just get it from another source, but to actually watch them so they can see it viscerally in the moment. My jaw dropped. It completely dropped. And that's why the tweet actually is referencing at the end of Usual Suspects, you go, oh my goodness, and you need to rewatch it because you want to see the mechanisms that all played out to where we're at. And sorry, this isn't a spoiler alert because all of y'all should have seen
by now
seen The Usual Suspects, but it was very much like that. It got to the, as we're going through the hearing, I'm just going, wow, as they bring it all back. And I think in particular, seeing Ivanka Trump turn on her father, but in a way that she looked like a ghost, not just the filter itself, but just her entire energy. And this was the first time where I was watching something like this. And I've seen a lot of hearings, and I was like, oh, someone's going to prison here. People are going to prison. So I actually think we're going to see accountability out of this. They did like over 1,000 depositions. Do you know how much video
Oh yeah,
that is?
So, but do you think that it's going to move the needle for the public at all? Because a lot of the temperature that I'm taking of people is, like people like me, I watched it and, it just affirmed what I already suspected and what I already believed. And a lot of the people that I know who do what I do, what we do, we're kind of in the, of course, this is what we've been saying. So yeah, good for you for bringing this out. And then, the MAGA crowd that I know are like, it's all a hoax. And they tuned out. So do you think this is going to move the needle?
So that's an excellent question. And I have to say, it does concern me that I have spoken to many of my apolitical friends who didn't even know that hearings were happening, for one. And I think that's a failure on the part of all of us for not apparently tweeting about it, posting about it, expressing that it is going to be prime time. And why is that important? Because these apolitical friends tend to have, at least in my world, friends who don't care, who just want to move on, who think January 6th was from, we just need to move on as a country. And it's like, no, you can't move on without accountability. That being said, the consistency of the messaging from the January 6th committee, which is of patience, it's coming. Don't worry, we're doing the work. We can't reveal to you everything that is happening. Right. The consistency of that as it goes up against the inconsistency in the lies that, for example, Fox News is tossing around. So if one side remains consistent in revealing the information, and the other side is all over the place, trying to almost make it up as they go along. It really felt like they were scrambling to try to figure out how to show the hearings on Fox News, but not show the hearings on Fox News. And we saw footage of what it looked like on Fox News, which they showed the chambers and people having the audience as opposed to the visceral video, and they cut away at important parts. And so the thing about a lie is a lie always eventually falls apart. And the truth, because it's the truth, as long as it's consistent and it outlasts the lie. And so I think that's what we're seeing, and we're going to see them. I mean, to me, it was riveting television. It truly was. And this comes from somebody
for you and me, I think it was. But I was watching Frank Luntz's tweets, and he was doing a focus group, and I think, I don't know what you think of Frank Luntz, but I think his messaging is always important to watch, because it's kind of where the Republicans go. And, he had 10 students and they were all on their phones. They weren't paying attention. It wasn't the kind of, 6 seconds here. It wasn't, spellbinding stuff that I think the right had kind of built it up for their audience to be. And where my concern is, and why I think what you guys do at Lincoln Project is so important, is that you're doing the media stuff that needs to be done that the left has never built. The right has a media empire. They've got a talk radio machine, an outrage candy machine, second to none. They've got dominance in cable news. They have this messaging monster where they're going to spin this how they're going to spin it. And I don't know that the what happened gets out far enough. I'm curious if you agree.
So the messaging piece, like, we have a hard time with hammering people over the head with a consistent message that we need to. And that's like center left. And so my concern, it does lie there, but that's why this moment is so important, building the urgency of it, I think, which they did bring in somebody who has experience in producing. I think he came from Newsline, maybe, one of the old shows. And
yeah,
so
Good Morning America, I think, was one of them too.
Okay. Yeah. And knows how to build drama into something. So and here's the thing, the hearings themselves can't be the drama. Why? Because drama can be dismissed. So the hearing themselves are presenting like the context, the facts. I think it's actually on the people who are commenting on it, right? Your show, on my show, what they're doing with the breakdown and Tara and Rick. That's where we can really hone in on the messaging and say, like, hey, America, this is urgent. And it's not just January 6th. It's the plot that led up to January 6th. I think sometimes saying January 6th over and over again,
yep,
it puts people in the wrong mindset and we need to frame it as the plot leading up to January 6th.
No, and this is where I think it was important that they showed the video. And I think what the case has to be is you're going to watch what happened on January 6th with different eyes, knowing that there were all of these memos, there were all of these documents, there was all of this information that went into that day to stop the steal. Because I say, and maybe you'll agree or disagree, that going there itself, you were thinking about committing a crime. The stated purpose of being there was to stop the certification of that election. It wasn't about walking through the velvet ropes and having a wonderful day at the Capitol. It was about stopping the certification of that election. So all of those people went there with that stated goal in pressuring Mike Pence into breaking the law.
Absolutely. And, with the Proud Boys, I think they had people with weapons. They had weapons stocked outside of the city just in case they needed to bring in the reinforcements. And I heard you earlier, and it's like they were documenting a lot of what they were doing because they thought they were going to come out as winners. Why? Because they knew that there was a plan, a sophisticated 7-point plan, as Liz Cheney mentioned, a sophisticated 7-point plan that almost in their minds assured them victory. So they felt safe in doing so. And so I think when people have an understanding that that Trump is complicit, and I love that that's how they laid it out. And that's why I think it's important for people to watch, because maybe that's not what you get secondhand, is understanding how complicit Trump was and how aware he was that he did not win the election and decided to push forward anyway, despite all of his advisors actually telling him, no, you can't do it, it's illegal. And I think that's where the framing needs to be, is that those steps that led up to it.
And go back to the fact that the very best people that he surrounded himself were all cowards. None of them stood up to him, and none of them stood up for democracy. None of them stood up for the rule of law. There were people who were advising, but nobody at the moment came out and said, no, wait a minute, you're all stupid. There was no fraud. None of this stuff is true. Rudy Giuliani at the Four Seasons landscaping business, all that's BS. Nobody did it.
See, this is the thing, though. I don't think they were cowards. I think they thought he was going to get away with it, and they were trying to make sure that they were on the right side. And I think they, except for the ones who jumped ship after January 6th, I'm like, nah, like, you already knew about this stuff going into it. You don't get to jump ship now. But I don't know that cowards, yes, in the sense that anybody who's not willing to stand up for democracy is a coward. But I think they were playing their hand, and they just played poorly.
Well, I had one person say, well, they believed that. One person explained to me that they probably believed that the institutions would hold, our court system wouldn't allow it, that, our institutions, they had held to that point. So I'm going, no, I'm not buying it. Not even a little bit.
Yeah. No. And weren't they concerned people would die? Like, institutions may hold, but people still died. And they had to have known that that was a possibility. So that makes someone evil in my book. Like, that's not just cowardly, that's evil.
So one thing that out of that hearing that really stuck with you, the one thing that you went, oh, wow, What was? Is there one thing? I mean, there's a lot, but one thing that
Yeah.
you go, oh my gosh, that.
Oh, there was a couple, so I actually want to mention a couple. It was the smugness of Jared Kushner in his response of whining, like hearing the word whining. I was like, this guy's not even taking it seriously. Like, is he a total sociopath? So that stood out for me. But also the fact that we have a domestic terrorism group basically embedded in the plot to overturn an election. Like, that's crazy. Someone who's been photographed, like a group with members who've been photographed with officials, like somebody just posted a picture with one of the leaders with Abbott. Like that to me is the part that should be very alarming to anybody who is watching. Like this is a coordinated group that is now also talking about getting engaged with poll watching coming into 2022. So this stuff has consequences for things that are happening right now and what will be happening in the coming months, not just January 6th. And so that to me is like the alarm should be going off.
No, and to your point on this, and the reason that this is so important, because I've had people go, and that was 17 months ago. It's over. They didn't get away with it. Forget about it. Move on. We've got inflation. We've got gas prices. We've got baby formula. We've got all of these other distractions. Why is this important? And I think you've laid it out. It's ongoing. They've learned lessons from their failure, and it doesn't mean they're going to stop.
Oh, they're absolutely not going to stop. Once you play a game like this, you're all in. They're clearly all in. They're all in or they're going to jail. That's it.
That's scary.
I mean, this isn't a game that you just take your ball and go, oh, I didn't do so well, so I bring it home. No, like they're all in.
Does this have to be Trump being imprisoned? Does this have to be Trump, being discredited for this to stop? Or is there no way to stop this from continuing because Trump doesn't matter? Because there's part of me that goes, at this point, the genie's out of the bottle. Whatever, analogy you want to use, the cat's out of the bag, the crazy's out of the asylum, whatever. I fear that the Republican Party is so far off the rails that even if you do indict someone like Trump, I mean, we saw in Michigan, for instance, the leading gubernatorial candidate got arrested, and they're saying this is going to help him. So I'm afraid that too far off. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, accountability is important to the people on the left who are saying they're not going to vote because this entire system is broken and therefore is irreparable. So accountability is important for that piece of things alone. The people who are on the right who are going to be emboldened by an indictment or who are going to go, see, this is a witch hunt. Like they're already so far gone that the only way to get them back is through other means. It doesn't have anything to do with this hearing. I think the hearing needs to be for the people who are those moderate. Like right now, everybody should be reaching out to their moderate Republican friends and say, hey, now would be a good time to come on over. We'll give you a 2-week grace period right now. We're going to give you 2 weeks. You've seen it now. Come on over.
No, and I've been saying this the entire time. I'm reaching out to my Republican friends to come bring your party somewhere back to the sane line. I don't even want you fully sane. I'm not even asking for that. I know that's too much. Just somewhere near. Just come on into the ballpark, into the sane ballpark.
And no judgment, because I think a lot of people are embarrassed perhaps after seeing the hearing or having the moderate people, any sensible person would probably right now go, ooh, this is embarrassing. We had a sitting president who was a sore loser who decided to dismantle democracy in order to stay in power. That's embarrassing.
We'll leave a burn barrel at the front of the entrance. You can put your flag and your T-shirt and whatever else you got. Put it in there, let it burn, and then we can come in and we can all go, that was just a bad experience. Had a bad moment.
Yeah.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
It'd be a cleansing kind of moment. So last line of questioning I got for you, because Monday, another hearing, 10 a.m., I believe. I'm a big fan of the primetime stuff. I wish we would stay there, but 10 a.m. Is the time they've chosen. What do you think is going to come out of this one?
Yeah, so I'm actually concerned about the timing of that as well, because it's 7 a.m. here on the West Coast. And I'm like, come on, could we not afford to get this on prime time? Isn't it that important? I feel like it sends a strange message to all of a sudden put it at 7 a.m. But this is what I think they set the tone in the first hearing. I think this next hearing is going to be the one where we start to see evidence, that damning evidence. Like right now, they just kind of scratch the surface to let people know, oh, we got the goods.
Right.
I think Monday's the one where everyone is going to want to tune in. I think it was 20 million viewers like on the major networks watched, but I think we need to see bigger numbers. I'm hoping we see bigger numbers, even though it's at this weird time, because I think we're going to see the damning evidence that, as Raskin said, blows the roof off the house. I think we're going to start seeing some of that.
On my bingo card, Ginny Thomas's name is on the bingo card. I got to see her name come up. That's got to happen at some point during the hearing for me to win. Because she's been at the heart of all of this horrible, for years. Her name's got to come up at some point.
Yeah, I have some tweets sitting in my drafts waiting for Ginny Thomas. So.
Yeah, there it is. But Maya, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing your thoughts, your expertise. You do incredible work there at the Lincoln Project over on Lincoln Project TV. I hope folks will check out We're Speaking there, lincolnproject.us, the website. Maya May, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
Beautiful stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Listening to The Rick Smith Show here on WBAI 99.5. Become one of our WBAI buddies by going to WBAI.org and signing up to become a WBAI buddy and tell them, hey, I like The Rick Smith Show, and they'll tell us, and we'll send you a copy of our book, Daddy, What's the Middle Class, just for helping keep this station on the air and programs like ours going. So go to WBAI.org and become a buddy today. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1946. That was the day that the U.S. Supreme Court handed down a decision that would have massive implications for American workers. The case was known as Anderson v. Mount Clemens Pottery. The pottery company was operated on a large 8-acre property in Mount Clemens, Michigan. Each day, the workers punched into their shifts and then had to make their way to their workstations. There, they had to get ready to work, perhaps donning gloves, sharpening tools, or readying their workstations. The company estimated that these tasks took 14 minutes. So, they subtracted 14 minutes from the workers' timesheets each day. 7 workers had had enough and decided to sue the company with backing from their union. They argued that they should be compensated for their entire time, including the time it took to prepare for work. The Supreme Court agreed with the workers. Justice Frank Murphy wrote the decision for the court. He himself was from Michigan and had previously been the mayor of Detroit and the governor of the state. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court case was not the last word on the matter. In 1994, the State Bar of Michigan and the Macomb County Bar Association helped erect a historic marker commemorating this important case. It described what happened after Justice Murphy's determination. Quote, the following year, Congress, responding to the Mount Clemens pottery decision, enacted the Portal to Portal Act to relieve employers of the obligation to pay for time spent in non-productive activities, except where such activities are compensable through custom or contract, notably through collective bargaining. In other words, Congress passed a law undermining the court's protection of workers. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So today, the big March for Our Lives rally in D.C. and more than 450 across the country, people taking to the streets to demand a little gun sanity. And the march in D.C., a little excitement as someone, and this is one of those things where wasn't there, don't have all of the details, but my next guest actually wrote a story on it. Somebody yelled, "I have a gun," and there was some pretty tense moments. We live in very, very bizarre times that someone would do something like that in a crowd, especially that kind of crowd. Here to share a little thoughts on the day's rally and this incident as well. I've asked Zach Patrizio to come talk with us. Zach's a media reporter over at the Daily Beast. Zach, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick, thanks so much for having me on.
So let's talk about this incident first before we get to the rally. What happened?
Yeah, so right around 1:38 this afternoon on the National Mall, kind of closer to the monument, there were probably close to 30,000 organizers, say 40,000 people kind of gathered about, kind of intently listening into speakers, kind of sharing their thoughts about gun reform in this country and why now is the right time to do such. These speakers came up one by one, and we hit 1:38, and all of a sudden, someone yells something in the crowd. I'm back pretty far, can't hear much, but according to witnesses that spoke with the Daily Beast, these witnesses said that people around the person thought that this person said, I have a gun, and this immediately kind of terrified, rightfully so, this massive crowd of people, and these people, instantaneously, people in the front row witness told the Daily Beast, dropped to the ground, and people kind of towards the outside immediately just start sprinting everywhere, right? So the White House is kind of behind where they're posted up. So people start running across the White House. People are running everywhere. And there was this thought that there's potentially an active shooter here. I follow park police kind of into the scene. And while, this is all going down, there's a person on stage yelling that there's not a problem here, do not run, and so on. It seemed as though security for the event quickly apprehended this kind of person who to me seemed kind of a bit off their rocker and a bit kind of perhaps religiously touched, if you will, kind of spewing things. And at least one witness that was there kind of really, really close to this gentleman said that he might have yelled, "I am God," during the moment of silence, which is a pretty strange thing to yell. The whole thing kind of seems pretty weird to me. I know some people that I'd spoken with afterwards for the Daily Beast, were crying, very visibly upset about this thing, about the incident, these 30 or so on seconds.
No, it's the question that as I was reading your story, the question I now come up with is this something we're going to have to worry about anytime we have these kind of rallies or any kind of rallies, that now this is going to be a target for somebody else who wants to make a name for themselves? It's a scary thing, Zach.
Yeah, it is. You could kind of see these people. I know I spoke with a mother who was, her daughter was shot at Virginia Tech way back when. And this person, seemingly this incident brought back kind of those moments of terror of her getting the phone call. So of course, this is kind of already a very sensitive and very emotional event for many people kind of coming into it. And on top of it, to have this kind of scare, right in the nation's capital. Unfortunately, in today's age, it does seem like something that's, a possibility, which I think is why so many people took it really seriously.
Yeah. Now, for me, this kind of an incident is one of those moments where I go, sorry, don't need a semi-automatic weapon with a 100-round clip. Sorry, you don't need that, because you got a 6-shooter, you got a 6-pump shotgun, you got something like that. The severity of an incident like that is going to be much less. I'm going to have a fighting chance. People are going to have a chance to stop it, to defend themselves. But given the kind of firepower that is out there, that is legal today, that a legal gun owner yesterday becoming a not legal gun owner today could wreak the kind of havoc on a crowd like that, is kind of the reason I think we have to do something.
Yeah, one of the themes that I kind of picked up while I was out there, kind of before the gunman scare, the false alarm happened, was this common theme about banning, high capacity magazines. This was kind of one of the things that a lot of people were kind of bringing up to me as a solution. I think a lot of people out there, while there are some people that say ban every single gun, there were some people out there saying that. I don't think that was the majority. I think the most of them were, look, we need some practical reform and we need it done now. Yeah. I know I'd spoken with one gentleman, for the Daily Beast who had said, look, during Obama, we struggled to get a lot done. Trump, of course, not much gun reform there. And Biden, is kind of blowing it a bit, right? So yeah, there was some criticism there, and clearly some frustration aimed towards the White House as it kind of sat in the backdrop this afternoon, as many attendees were really frustrated with the administration and kind of the lack of kind of action taken.
Yeah, I have friends who use the analogy of, cars kill people too. We're not banning cars, and I'm going, yeah, but we register them. We insure them. We train people with them. There's a lot of accountability. And I like that analogy for where I like to go with this. Yeah, I think there should be accountability for them. If it's used in a crime or misused, you should be held accountable. It should be insured. You should have some training. There should be some of that. And I know, constitutional right. Yeah, but I'm a firm believer in the whole well-regulated militia part. This sounds like the well-regulated part, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I thought one of the things that was interesting was this sign. It said, if a child is hitting people with a stick, I'd blame the child and not the stick. However, I would still take the stick away. It was kind of a sign that somebody was kind of holding at the rally, and I thought that kind of encapsulated much of the things that a lot of attendees were saying was look like the guns. The guns are kind of a big part of the problem here, and the certain types of guns that are kind of readily available. I know there was a speaker that got up and said, someone at their school that inflicted violence, that many of the schools that we continually see this type of violence occur, had mentioned the kid was like 18 when he bought a gun, and it was like 2 days after his birthday or whatever, and it's just so young. So yeah, there were a lot of proposals and a lot of things out there, but I do have to say that scare really kind of derailed the event. I know a lot of people. There was one family that the Daily Beast spoke with that said like they're going home after the event, and a lot of people kind of said the same thing. So kind of dampen the crowd a bit.
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Zach Petrizio. He's a media reporter with the Daily Beast. You can check out his work at thedailybeast.com. We'll get links out on social media where you can find his piece. I suggest reading and following. You're one of my favorite people over there. I got a bunch of friends that work there, but you're one of my favorite folks because you followed the idiot from Scranton, which I love.
Yeah, right. What was his name? Bob Bullis? Was that his name?
Bob Bullis. Yeah, that was one of my favorite things. But I look at some of these in that crowd, and it's the same crowd. He couldn't find DC, and thank goodness. My problem with that crowd is they're in government should do nothing. We should do nothing on guns because, these kind of shootings, these kind of instances, even these kind of threats, this is the price of living in a free society. And I've had a bunch of people tell me this, and I reject that on a certain level. Look, we should have the freedom to say what we want, do what we want. But when your rights infringe on mine, we got problems, and that's why we have government, why we have laws. So for me, this moment, that person should be held accountable in a big way. And the same thing with the guns. We've got to hold people accountable.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say Bob Bullis. Yeah, I mean, it seems there's some, I mean, this guy, at least from kind of what I picked up, it seems like religion was also a motivator for him, or in some capacity, because he kept, one witness told the Daily Beast that he said, I am God. So yeah, clearly something going on there spiritually. But yeah, no, with Bob Bullis, it was kind of one and the same. It was kind of like the spirituality sense of like, oh, we're going to take things over, right? Yeah, kind of strange. But no, I do remember coming on the show and talking about Bob. He's a character. He's the one that started this whole, kind of kicked off the whole thing. And we still see truckers, what are they? There was like probably 20 or 30 still up in just north of DC, like an hour and a half north still.
Yeah, let them at $6 a gallon. Let them drive around in circles all day long.
I never understood that. I mean, now, of course, the People's Convoy, since we've spoken at least, the convoy's kind of dissolved due to infighting and a luxury RV. I don't know if you heard about this, but of course, the luxury RV was kind of, I think, purchased perhaps with the funds, and then Convoy always got upset because they were sleeping in the back of their cars or kind of on the ground, and they were like, why are these leaders kind of hanging out in this luxury RV? So that kind of foiled the whole thing, and people got pretty upset over that. But
yeah, fraud and graft and that kind of stuff tends to break up movements like that, especially when you're talking with people who claim to be true believers. And this is one of these moments. And, the true believers aside, you're never going to get them. This is where the rest of us, and I've yet to meet somebody who isn't in favor of gun control. And you go, that's not true. No, it is. I don't know anybody who wants me to have a thermonuclear weapon. I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who wants me to have a stealth bomber. I don't know anybody who wants me to have a surface-to-air missile. You can go down the list. I don't know anybody who wants me to have that stuff. So for me, it's not a matter of whether we have gun control or we don't have gun control. It's simply where we draw that line. And I think we need to have that conversation. And I think some common sense red flag laws, some domestic violence laws that look into this, and background checks and some these bump stocks, these ghost guns. This stuff has to be on the table.
Yeah, no, I mean, this sounds exactly what a lot of the attendees were saying today. Sounds like, a lot of people, especially on the left side of things, liberals are growing increasingly frustrated with like kind of the lack of action. Congress is kind of this slow moving body in DC, and it's like, well, why isn't there, the March for Our Lives marched in 2018 originally, and they're back again. And I know one of the speakers, Mayor Bowser, what came up, one of the first things she said is like, enough is enough. It seems like people were growing increasingly frustrated and kind of really annoyed by the lack of action.
Yeah. So last question I've got for you, in talking to the people who were putting this together, what's the movement? What's the hope coming out of this? And then what's the movement forward? Obviously, this was to get the kind of media attention, the organizing attention that's going on right now. To push Congress to do something. Because look, the Manchin Toomey bill was 2013? That died. I personally don't expect anything of any substance to happen. But what are they saying the hope going forward tomorrow and the day after is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the speakers were really some were optimistic. Some were less optimistic, of course. But yeah, no, a lot of the attendees were really, really kind of frustrated and upset with the lack of action. And I think they saw today as, positive, in terms of the crowd. I know organizers had said 40,000 people out there. It was raining in DC for a certain period of this whole thing, which is kind of hats off to them for keeping people out there in the rain, and holding a crowd. But yeah, I think a lot of the people kind of moving forward were kind of like, what's next if Biden isn't kind of gonna put the hammer down on some of these things. So I think there was some frustration there, and I think they kind of have to, continue to organize and push legislators that are even kind of on the progressive side of things, that, kind of getting caught up in some of the gridlock we see too often in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, well, we'll see where this goes. But a good day across the country. The reports I'm seeing are lots of people in the streets, lots of people demanding gun sanity and something be done. But Zach, I appreciate the time. Always great talking to you, my friend.
Thank you so much, Rick.
Good stuff. Make sure you check out Zach's work. You can find that at thedailybeast.com. We'll get links out on social media, how you can check that out. I'm going to take a quick break, right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. Make sure you grab the podcast if you miss any portion of our program, this one or any others. Back after this.
Divided we beg. Rick Smith.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here on WBAI 99.5 New York. Go to WBAI.org and become a WBAI buddy today. Help keep radio programs like ours on the air by becoming a WBAI buddy. Do that by going to WBAI.org and become one of our buddies. Do that today. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1963. That was the day President John F. Kennedy signed the Equal Pay Act. The goal of the act was to end wage discrimination against women. It required equal pay for equal work. One of the leading advocates of the act was Esther Peterson. At the time, Esther was the highest-ranking woman in President Kennedy's administration. She headed the Women's Bureau for the Department of Labor. In 1981, President Ronald Reagan awarded Esther the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor. She was recognized for a lifetime of tireless work for women, workers, and consumers, including her efforts on behalf of the Equal Pay Act. It certainly was an uphill battle to pass the legislation. Similar proposals had failed to make it through Congress for nearly 2 decades. Many business interests lined up in opposition. Finally, in 1963, there was enough momentum to pass the landmark legislation. At the signing, President Kennedy reflected on the significance of the measure, saying, "While much remains to be done to achieve full equality of economic opportunity, for the average woman worker earns only 60% of the average wage for men. This legislation is a significant step forward. Our economy today depends upon women in the labor force. 1 out of every 3 workers is a woman. Today, there are almost 25 million women employed, and their number is rising faster than the number of men in the labor force. The act had a profoundly positive impact for women workers. Yet today, that impact remains incomplete. Women still only make about 80% of the average wage for men. It is up to today's labor leaders to complete Esther's fight for true pay equality." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So the hope is this time something gets done, that these rallies, that this effort amounts to getting some sanity in our gun laws. And look, I'm not a gun grabber. I'm not someone who thinks we go round up everybody with guns. No, that's not what we're going to do. But, I'll tell you, as I've said before, I grew up in an area where if you saw somebody with a gun, somebody was going to die. You were ducking for cover. But I remember being as a kid in situations going, he's only got 6 shots. I can't imagine being in a situation where I have no idea and how fast you can change clips, and something has to be done. And I'm hoping that this is the moment that we start talking about it. That this is the moment we start moving in a direction to get something done. And I'm hoping out of these rallies, out of this movement, that happens. For me, something needs to get done. Also,